and welcome to David's Bookshop. My name's Paul Wallace, I run the bookshop here, and I'm very happy to welcome you all. And there are lots of people here I've not seen before, which is quite unusual for us, but it's great, it's brilliant. And I'm here to welcome Bula Grant, who many of you know, but one or two of you don't. She is here to launch her new novel, which is the first of a trilogy, Honor's Shadow. She, for those of you who don't know, she's a successful business psychologist and executive coach. So she's also, it says here, she's completed an MA in creative writing. So I believe this book was selected by Karnak on the basis of a submission from Creative Writing Group, which is a fantastic thing. I know Karnak Press from their clinical psychology books, and I believe this is their first foray into fiction. So we're honoured to have Bula here, so please welcome.
Well, how nice to see so many friends here. You know, earlier today when I was thinking about coming to talk to you all, I had this sudden, very vivid memory from my childhood. When I was about 8 years old, and the headmaster of my junior school, Mr. Roberts, had asked me to read out a composition in assembly, a composition that I'd written. And it was called A Grey Misty Day. It was about 2 paragraphs long. And he told my mother that he thought I had talent as a creative writer. So I'm holding him responsible for me standing here tonight. But I was very thrilled with his comment, and I immediately went to the stationer's shop and bought a little notebook with a cardboard cover, took it home, wrote painstakingly on the front, "A book by Voula Choflius," as I was then, looked at it proudly, opened the cover, picked up my pen, thought, I haven't got the faintest idea what to write. And I was thinking about it today, I thought, God, would I have been daunted back then when I was 8 to know that it would be another 30 years or so before... Okay, don't laugh quite so loudly at that joke. Before there would be a book in the world with my name on. And I thought, well, maybe I would have been comforted to know that after many decades of my own life experience and of reading many stories and knowing the stories of my family and friends and the people I work with, I will never look at a page and say I don't know what to write. I probably could write stories for the rest of my life and not get them all down. So, as Paul has said, we're here to launch the paperback. I didn't see this till I got here tonight. I felt almost as weepy as the day last September when I saw the hardback, which felt like seeing a newborn baby practically. And the novel is about secrets, betrayal and revenge in marriage, and the very potent emotions that go with that experience. And sadly, of course, we live at a time where it's a very common experience for people to have. Many of you, I'm sure, if you haven't had the experience yourself, you'll certainly know somebody in your close circle of family and friends who've been through that kind of experience. And I think one of the reasons it can be so devastating is what it does emotionally to the sufferer, because people feel 3 primary negative emotions all at once. You feel fear, you feel grief, and you feel anger. You feel them all together in a potent mix that becomes quite uncontrollable. And we see many tragedies in the press each day to show just how uncontrollable that can become. Karnak has been known for a long time for its titles in psychology and psychotherapy. And 2 years ago, they decided that they would start publishing a selected list of fiction, very specifically either written by psychologists or having a psychological theme. So for me, as a working psychologist and who'd written a psychological book, it really was the perfect home for Honor's Shadow. I was very proud to be published by them. I had the good fortune to contribute to a book, the psychology book, which has come out at pretty much the same time as the paperback of Honor's Shadow. It came out in February 2012. And it's a book aimed at conveying the big ideas in psychology over the last few hundred years and explaining them in a very accessible way. It's not an academic textbook, it's not for professional psychologists, it's for anyone who's interested in psychology. And it seems to me we're at a time where we're all fascinated by psychology. We look to psychology to get insights and ideas about how we can understand ourselves, understand other people, understand our relationships. And so it feels like it's a book that's come along at a really good moment, actually, in terms of the history of psychology. I wrote, there's a whole section in here called The Psychology of Difference, and I wrote all those chapters. There's 9 of them. So I was looking at the differences between us as human beings, differences in intelligence, in personality, in motivation, emotional styles, creativity, sanity. And I wrote my chapters, 9 of them, 6 weeks last summer. And it was a really good moment to be asked to do it, because On a Shadow had gone to press earlier that year. I was starting to do some plotting around my second novel, but I wasn't really deeply immersed in it. So I thought, yeah, that'd be a great idea, do some psychology writing. And for the first few weeks, it really was great. I was researching. Wikipedia was my greatest friend, directed me to all the resources I needed. And I thought, yeah, I should do this, I should do this. Maybe I should go back and study. And then, of course, 2 things hit me. The first was, it's not like writing creatively. I was reporting. I had to report somebody else's ideas and get them accurate. Not just the detail of the dates and the names, but try to faithfully report and capture the concepts that they were trying to convey. So it became very stressful. In fact, in the last 2 weeks of it, as the deadline really was coming home, I was like a sullen teenager with too much homework to do. I can't do this, why did I do it? However, I'm very proud that I did, and it's a particularly beautiful book, presenting all its information with charts, quotes, visuals, to make it very accessible to the people who want to just understand the fundamental ideas without getting too much into the kind of psychological detail of it. So it was very different from writing fiction, because of course in writing fiction my imagination is my best tool. That's what I need to... It never feels like homework when I'm writing creatively, it just feels like a lot of fun. And because I'm making things up. I'm making up plots and characters, I'm making up the settings. The thing that I don't make up is the psychology. I stay very faithful to psychological ideas, and I'm trying to convey some of those ideas through the story that I'm telling. So I think of my fiction as psychological drama, and by that what I mean is there will be an action, there will be a plot, there will be an action story, there will be things happening, and there will be characters doing those things. But deeper underneath, the psychology is I'm faithful to what would really happen in a psychological sense when these people would be put under this stress in this situation. So it's very different. Suits me much better than writing psychology, I found. So. And of course, On a Shadow is very much on a psychological theme, and I'd like to say a bit more about that theme, because Honor, of course, is the main character in the novel, and when I say On a Shadow, I'm not actually referring to the dark shadow cast on the floor in the sunlight. I'm referring to something quite different. I'm referring to a psychological idea of our shadow personality. It was an idea put forward probably 100 years ago by Carl Jung, who, as you probably know, is one of the real founding fathers of modern-day psychology with Sigmund Freud. And his idea was that as well as the personality we have, that we show the world and that we see in other people, we also have a deeper, darker side of our personality, our shadow side. And what's contained, what's repressed into our shadow side, is those things we believe to be our shortcomings, our weaknesses, and our failings. The things we want to hide from the world, that we might be ashamed of, that we might have learned from really quite young what the world welcomes in us and what the world doesn't want to see in us. Children learn quite early what's good behaviour and bad behaviour, and they repress some of those aspects of themselves into the shadow. It's very unconscious, you don't know you're doing it, you're not aware of it, just like, you know, the shadow is behind me, I can never see it. I can turn around and try to, but as soon as I do, it flicks around in another direction. You might be able to see it in me, of course, but I can't see it in me. And Carl Jung believed, actually, that the process of therapy was simply the process of uncovering what's in the shadow self. Actually, I'm doing it like this, as if repression is, as Jung thought, in the soul. I mean, what we know now, I should be doing this. We repress our shadow into the deeper structures of our brain that store and process our emotional memories. So I'd like to, just a last word on Carl Jung. He believed that the contents of the shadow, for many of us, would be aspects of our aggression, of our sexuality, and of our creativity. But the specifics for any person in their shadow personality is entirely dependent on your family background, what your experience has been, what your culture is, where you've been raised. I'd like to... I'd like to try to illustrate this idea for you with an example. And I'd like to take an example from Honor's Ghost, which is the follow-up to Honor's Shadow, and I am deeply immersed in it now. And she's a minor character, but she just suits my purpose tonight to talk about, to illustrate this idea of the shadow. Her name is Dolores, and she comes to see Honor for therapy, and she's a middle-aged woman, a kind, gentle, quite quiet, passive woman, and she's disappointed with the way her life has turned out. She hasn't got the things that she wanted. She didn't even know what she wanted. So Honor and Dolores explored for a few sessions what had happened to Dolores when she was a small child. And it turned out that she was one of 5 children born within 4 years. She had a brother, a sister, Dolores, and a year later, twin girls. Their mother was a devoted mother and wanted to be a good mother, but I'm sure the mothers among us can shudder at the thought of having 5 babies under 4 to raise simultaneously. So she had to find a way to do that. And she did it by training them to be very, very good children. By which I mean she made them sit down and be quiet and not squabble. God knows how she did it, by the way, but apparently she did. And so they learned and to not ask and to not... There's a saying in Wales which is always on the want. You know, always clamouring for your own needs and wants to be met. And she taught them not to be like that. So what was repressed into Dolores' shadow was all her ability to know what she wanted in the world and go out and get it for herself. So what's in your shadow may not be bad or difficult things. They're just things that were not required at the time that you were first expressing them.